Hi, it's Dan here from Genetec's technical training team, and today we'll be looking at what's new in Security Center version 5.11. This presentation will explain the new features in Security Center 5.11. It'll be divided into the following 4 sections. We'll look at what's new in the Security Center platform itself. This includes about 12 new features. Then we'll look at what's new in Security Center Omnicast, or the video module. There's only one new feature to look at there. Followed by what's new in Security Center AutoView, or our automated license plate recognition module, where we'll find 2 new features. And lastly, we'll look at Security Center Synergis, what's new in version 5.11, Synergis being our access control module, where we'll find 5 new features. Before we start looking at the new features in version 5.11, where can you go to find more information? Well, use the Genetec portal. portal.genetec.com. This portal actually contains 3 subsites or subportals, and depending on your level of access, once you've logged on, you may see 1, 2, or all 3 of these subsites. They are the technical assistance site. This is where we'd go for software downloads, license downloads, and other tech support issues. The TechDoc Hub portal. This is where we'd find all of the technical documentation, installation guide, release notes, user guides, administrator guides, etc. And the Channel Partners portal. This is full of commercial, sales, and marketing resources for sales and business needs, really. If we go to the Technical Assistance portal, this is where we can download the software installers themselves. Navigate your way to the product download page, and you'll need to choose the product, in our case Security Center, the version, and the build number or the minor version. Once you've set the product that you're looking for, the page will refresh and you will find download links on the right side of the page for the various different installers that could be downloaded from this page. On the TechDoc Hub, this is where we could find all of our documentation, release notes, administrator's guide, user guide, installation and upgrade guides, etc. Of special interest would be the release notes. The release notes are the document that contains all of the details about what's new in a given version. So let's begin by looking at what's new in Security Center 5.11, the platform itself. There are about 12 new features that have been added to Security Center 5.11, and we'll look quickly at each one of these 12, starting with a simplified licensing system. So if we think of the software license a bit as the OSI networking model, our old license was built on a 6-layer model where customers would have to choose their base package, Standard, Pro, or Enterprise, and then they'd have to choose the modules they wanted to work with, video or access control or AutoView, and then they'd have to choose the number of connections or the number of devices they wanted, the features that would be supported, any plugins and apps additional, and finally the Advantage or the service contract. There were 6 sort of individual layers that had to be worked through in creating the software license. This has been simplified and reduced to 3. So we no longer have to select whether we're going to be managing video or access control or license plate recognition or maps or intercoms. All of those types of modules are built in. Now what we do, we make choices at 3 different layers. We would choose the base package, Standard, Pro, or Enterprise. We'd choose the number of connections that we want into our system, and whether we want any extra features or service term. So that's the first change. The licensing format has been simplified substantially. Next, unit certificate management. This has to do with the unit assistant role having a new responsibility. In the past, the unit assistant role, which is a Security Center server role, was responsible for pushing firmware into our hardware devices Whether they were video units or access control units or license plate recognition units, it's the unit assistant role that had that responsibility. And not only would it be responsible for pushing firmware, but it also maintained the password database used by the Genetec servers to communicate with those devices. So every camera, every IP access controller, and every license plate reader requires certain authentication before you can tell it what to do. Therefore, the Genetec server would save a database containing usernames and passwords for the purpose of connecting to all of these devices. It's the unit assistant role that pushed firmware into hardware devices and maintained the password database for all of our devices. In 5.11, we've added a third feature to the unit assistant role. The unit assistant role can now push trusted security certificates to our hardware devices. Now, why do we want to manage certificates? What's the point? What's the purpose? Well, certificates signed by a trusted authority are used by computers, like government-issued photo ID is used by people to prove who you are. And in today's world of IT security, it becomes more and more critical to be able to ensure that the party that you're communicating with is in fact who they say they are. That the video stream a given server is receiving is in fact coming from the camera that we think it is and not some other device spoofing that camera. That when a client application connects and gives a username and password to log on, they're actually talking to the Genetec server and not some other malicious server that's replaced it and is trying to capture credentials. So in today's digital world, there is more and more need from a security perspective in having a mechanism that allows us to prove who we are. And this is a great analogy, this idea of comparing certificates in the world of computing to government-issued photo ID in the world of day-to-day human life. For example, travelers must present a specific type of ID to prove who they are before entering a country, and we know what type of ID that is. That's a passport. A passport is not any kind of ID. A passport is a special type of ID that has been issued by a trusted authority, the national government of whatever country you're coming from. Right? In a similar way, or using a similar mindset, a similar model, computers use certificates to prove who they are, and not all certificates are equal. Some certificates are signed by a trusted authority, and other certificates might be what we call self-signed certificates. So to ensure a secure computing environment, we normally want all of our devices to have certificates signed by a trusted authority, so that when the server talks to the camera or the door controller or the license plate reader, it knows that it's talking to the actual device and not something else that's an imposter. So this is just a quick high-level description of why certificates could be useful. Now, what's happening in Security Center 5.11 is that the unit assistant role is now able to push signed certificates down to the devices. And the unit assistant role, excuse me, is just sort of the gateway who does the pushing of the data. It doesn't actually sign the certificates. There is something known as the certificate signing plugin, which is not an extra. It's included in the basic installation, but this certificate signing plugin acts a little bit as if it was a certificate authority, creating and signing certificates, passing them to the unit assistant role so that the unit assistant role can then push it down to the hardware itself. And once the certificate has been installed in the hardware, we have a way to validate if we're talking to the actual hardware or not. Notice on the right side of the image, what I've added here in sort of pale or gray is the long-term goal for this feature. So the use of our own certificate signing plugin is just sort of an interim step or an intermediary step taking us toward the long-term goal of allowing some external certificate authority to push signed certificates towards the unit assistant role so that they may be pushed into our devices. Using an external certificate authority would be preferable for many of our customers, as they could use a corporate Active Directory certificate authority, part of your corporate domain already, or other external trusted root authorities like IdentTrust, DigiCert, VeriSign, GoDaddy, GlobalSign. There's all kinds of them out there. These are third-party companies who exist out there on the internet for the purpose of issuing trusted and signed certificates so that computers, web servers, mobile devices, whatever it is, have a sort of ID card they can use to prove who they are. Moving on. The third of the 12 new features in the Security Center 5.11 platform would be the ability to email a report in CSV format. So previously, reports in Security Center could be sent in either PDF format or Excel format. And what you'll find now is the action to email a report. I'll just show you as a manual action. If I say email a report. Now I'm showing this example to you as a manual action, but this action applies equally to automated event to actions or scheduled tasks. But if we see that I want to execute the manual action to email a report, and it asks me which report, my system only has one available. What you can see here is that now we have the choice that the report is sent in PDF, Excel, or comma-separated values, CSV format. So this is the new part right here, an additional format available for the action email a report. And the next new feature, send an email without a user having been created. So this feature is similar to, but not identical to, the change we saw earlier about emailing the report in CSV format. And what I mean by that is this has to do with the send an email action, where an additional option has been added. Let me show you what I mean by that. And once again, while this change does apply to the execution of manual actions, automated event to actions, as well as scheduled tasks, I will just use the manual action as my example to show you what it looks like. So in my security desk, I'm opening the manual action dialog box, and let me show you the send an email action. There we go. So in the past, we were limited to be able to send an email to recognized users of the Security Center system. So the only recipients could be Security Center users. We still have Security Center users available as email recipients, but we now also have a field for external email address. So if we need to send a video clip, a report, an alarm report, whatever the case may be, if we need to send it to somebody outside of the organization, they no longer have to have a Security Center user account set up. And we could just put any old email address in here. There we go. And the next new feature, if you apply a custom sort order to an alarm report and you quit the report, when you run the report again, it will remember your custom sort order. Let's take a look at that. So to show you this new feature, I will need to run a report. Let's say that I want to check up on my users' activities within the system. I would want to run a activity trail report. Now what I'm going to show you here applies to all reports. I'm just using the activity trail report as an example. This report will show us the user activities that have been logged for any given user. When did they log on? When did they log off? What cameras did they display? What doors did they unlock? What alarms did they acknowledge? What snapshots did they save? What video clips did they export? Etc., etc. Everything that a user does within the system. So I will select a specific user. Let me check up on user Dan, and I will run an activity trail report on user Dan. So I'm not going to apply any other search filters. Notice I could apply filters by activity, by application, by timestamp, etc. I just want to see all activities generated by user Dan, and I click Generate Report. As most of our reports do, we'll see that this report that contains all of the user activity generated by user Dan is sorted by default by date and timestamp. So in a descending order. So we've got the most recent user activity at the top and the oldest user activity down at the bottom, sorted by the event timestamp. I'm just going to come here and say for our particular use case, we are less interested with the timestamp and we're more interested in, I don't know, the activity name. Activity name would be things like user logged on, user logged off. Let me scroll up here and show you some of the others. Alarm acknowledged. Oh, I see that user Dan twice manually triggered an alarm. Live streaming started, live streaming stopped, health event dismissed, etc. So all I've done here is I've left the existing activity trail report, except I've changed the sort order, so I'm now sorting in ascending order by activity name. If I should close the report, and I won't even save it, I won't print it, I won't do anything. I just ran the report for on-screen reference, and when I'm finished, I close it. Gone. I could log off the system, reboot my workstation, come back the next day, and when I come back, if I run an activity report again, and let me make one little change. Instead of checking up on user Dan, let's run an activity trail report on user supervisor. Generate report. And while the report contains less, the supervisor was less busy than user Dan, we do find activities generated by the user supervisor, and we do find that the sort order is not the default sort by date and timestamp, but rather it has saved our custom sort order. The next new feature, backup and restore of user options. So this has to do with the customization of the security desk user options. Let me show you how it works. So here in the security desk, if I were to go into my options menu instead of one of the task menus, and I were to configure some of my options, like for example, I have multiple network interfaces on my workstation and I want to bind the application to a specific network interface. Or let's say under visual, I always want the taskbar, instead of running across the top, I always want it running across the bottom. There are many, many options available for the application, hundreds. And here's what I want to point out. This is the new feature. We now have a backup and a restore button. I can spend time configuring the options on one workstation, click backup, and what will be produced is an XML file. It'll ask me where I want to save this file, options.xml, and that XML file is my backed up options configuration. What's nice is that it doesn't have to be restored into the same workstation. Imagine if I have a project in which we're deploying 100 workstations and there's some weird option that has to be set a certain way. I could configure it in one workstation, take a backup, take that XML file, push it out to the other 99 workstations, and they would all share the same option. So that is the new feature that's here in 5.11, the backup and restore buttons for the options menu. Next up, email a report to cardholders. So once again, what I'm about to show you applies equally to the execution of a manual action to send a report to an email, the execution of an automated event to action, or even a scheduled task. This is applicable to all three. I will use the manual action just to show you the example. In the security desk application, if I come up to the notification tray and I click Hot Actions and I select I want to execute a manual action, you will see that there is a change to the action email a report. This one here. So this action in and of itself is not new, but some of the options are. As we saw earlier, all of the email actions now support the use of an external recipient. But what I want to point out here is, let's say we're not using an external recipient. We want a report sent to somebody who's involved with the system. In the past, we were limited to software users of the Security Center system. These icons here, admin, the administrator's group, the auto view user, user Dan, these are software users who have a user profile and can log on to Security Center software. As compared to, look at the icon beside Elon Musk, or Amir Thompson, or Nick Suzuki. These icons are a little bit different. These are not user icons, these are cardholder icons. So upon launching the action, email a report, I now have the choice of existing software users, the new option of choosing an external email address as the recipient, or we can choose cardholders. Now, of course, the cardholder would need to have an email address associated to their cardholder profile. That part isn't done yet. That's why I'm getting the red warning, because this cardholder, Nick Suzuki, doesn't actually have an email address associated to his cardholder profile. But this is the feature, that this list of recipients has changed and we're no longer limited just to software users. Now, I'm working in a very small training system with only a small handful of users and a small handful of cardholders. You might be working in a live production system with dozens of users and hundreds or thousands of cardholders. In that case, this one little scrolling window might not be the most effective way to select who you want the email report sent to. So don't forget that there is a filter button here that you can apply on your search. And you can do things like put in a user or cardholder's name directly into the search field in the name field. But look at this option we have. Under entity type, I can say, show me only the cardholders, or show me only the software users. Search, and the list becomes much smaller and more manageable. So don't forget about this filter icon in the search bar for large systems where you may have many, many possible recipients. That's it for this new feature, the ability to email a report to a cardholder. And the next new feature, a new print dialog box. So this new feature is actually more than just simply a new print dialog box. In fact, what we've done is we've replaced the report viewing application that's found under the hood. For many years, we had been using Microsoft Report Viewer as the report display application under the hood, and that has recently been replaced with PDF Sharp along with OpenXML, which provide a much more user-friendly graphical interface. So I'll just show you what that looks like. I'll need a report to run. So if I go into my Security Desk's public tasks, I do have a regular report that's been saved, my weekly alarm report. And by opening this report, I then find a list of all of the alarms that had been triggered over the last week, along with the detail associated to those alarms. So here's where the new feature comes in. In the past, when we said export report or print report, we were using Microsoft's Report Viewer. And now if we say export report or print report, we're using a PDF Sharp, which gives us a much nicer user experience. That's about it. It's just the reporting application under the hood that has been replaced. And the next new feature is the ability to apply custom sort orders on reports. So let's take a look at how this new custom sort order feature works. We'll need a report to work with. I do have one that's saved here, my weekly alarm report. So let me just launch my weekly alarm report, and here's how we apply the custom sort order. Or before I show that to you, traditionally we can modify the sort order just by clicking on a column header. If I click one of these column headers, The single click will sort all of the data in the report in ascending order by that column. And if I click it a second time, it'll sort in descending order. So that's sort of normal. We find that behavior with many tables in tables built into Microsoft Office, or if you're working with an Excel spreadsheet. We're familiar with that concept. So let me put back the default sort order in ascending order by what date and time was an alarm triggered. Now here's how we can apply the custom sort orders. And what's cool about this is you can apply multiple columns, or you can apply the sort order to multiple columns. Let me show you what I mean. I will right-click one of these column headers and I will choose Sort By. I will then say I want my alarm report sorted by, let's say, what's the scenario I'm addressing? We have reports that not all users are acknowledging alarms equally. Some users are much busier with alarms, and others of our users seem to be ignoring alarms and not responding as much as some of the users. So let's reorder this alarm report to sort by alarm name and then by user, whoever acknowledged the alarm, I should say. So our first column for sorting will be the alarm's name itself. And I want to add a second column on which this data will be sorted, and that will be the user who acknowledged the alarm, acknowledged by. Right? Now watch what happens when I apply this sort order. The data in my report has been rearranged. Let me just get this out of the way. Has been rearranged in ascending order by alarm name. All of the garage alarms are grouped together, all of the stockroom alarms are grouped together, etc. And then, secondly, by acknowledgement. Who acknowledged it? So, now can I just move some of these columns? Give me a second here. Acknowledged by. Can I move this column over here so that we can see them side by side? There we go. This will be a little bit of a more useful scenario here. So let me just put this over here. There we go. All right, so we can see the garage alarm has been triggered about, I don't know, 8-10 times. Dan has acknowledged it 3 times, operator 2 3 times, supervisor a couple of times, so that one seems to be under control. The office intrusion alarm has been triggered only once, and it was acknowledged by the admin user. The stockroom alarm looks like it's been triggered many times. And we can see that Dan has acknowledged 5 instances of that alarm, operator 1 twice, operator 2 4 times, and supervisor twice. So while the number of alarm acknowledgements are not identical, they're pretty similar. I guess user Dan is doing more work than the others, but in general, they're pretty similar. So this is the feature I wanted to show you, the ability to apply a custom sort order wherein sorting of the data will be applied using 2 columns or more, right? We could continue. We could right-click, sort by, and add another column. So maybe the next thing we need relevant to this investigation would be the alarm priority or the triggering event or something like that. But yeah, this is the new feature to be able to apply custom sort orders based on multiple columns in the report. And the next new feature, license changes for web and mobile clients. Now, in previous versions of Security Center, your Security Center license had to specify how many Security Desk PC clients needed to connect to the system, and how many web clients needed to connect to the system, and how many mobile clients needed to connect to the systems. These were 3 separate line items. The change that's been made here is web clients and mobile clients are all considered the same. They are simply external connections. So if we look at the new Security Center license, the way it's set up, and you can see that in any of the applications, I'm still in my Security Desk. I will open the About menu. And you can see that we can inspect the license details for many different aspects of our Security Center license. The feature that I'm talking about now would be found under Connections. And we can see that the number of mobile and web connections are all grouped together as one line item, and the number of security desk connections is a separate line item. So at this point, mobile and web clients are all considered the same from the licensing perspective. Two more features left for what's new with regards to the platform. And this next feature is relatively simple and straightforward. Bulgarian has been added as a supported language for Security Center applications. And with the addition of the Bulgarian language, this brings to a total of 25 the number of languages supported by Security Center's client applications. So let me just show you how you can switch languages. First of all, just take note, my Security Desk application is in English. Right? I'm going to log off and close the application. The language changing tool that I'm about to show you must always be used with all of the applications closed. All right. So in my Windows Start menu, the Security Center 5.11 program group, I will find Config Tool, Security Desk, but I also find a Language Tool utility. I'll open the Language Tool and we will find a list of 25 languages for which Security Center is supported. And here is the new addition, Bulgarian. So if I select Bulgarian and I click Save, the next time I launch any of my Security Center applications, they will no longer be displayed in English, but it will now be displayed in Bulgarian. We can already see from the splash screen down here that some of the text showing on the splash screen is no longer English. So I'll just wait for the login dialog box to load. And we should see that we have the Bulgarian language being displayed. And while we're waiting for that, just take note that there are a total of 25 total languages that you could choose from. All right, let's see what's happening with the Security Desk. There we go. My Security Desk has now opened. And as you can see, the user interface is no longer in English because it's in Bulgarian. And our last new feature for Security Center 5.11 platform is the default map per user group. So we can see this in the Config tool, the user management task. If we look at the properties of a user group and not an individual user, you can find under the Advanced tab that the new feature has been added right here. We can now establish a default map for an entire user group. In the past, we could do this for individual users, but it didn't exist as a user group property. There it is. And this concludes our What's New in Security Center 5.11 platform. Thank you for attending. What's new in Security Center 5.11 video? Well, we've only got one significant feature to discuss here. It's the archiver's ability to monitor the number of incoming events. And the reason this is significant, cameras send both a video stream and an event stream to the archiver, and the events are written to the archiver's database. Sometimes faulty hardware, misconfigured analytics, poor motion detection can send too many events, flooding the archiver's database. This is especially concerning when using SQL Express for the archiver's database, as the database size is limited. So there's a new event in Security Center 5.11 known as High Event Rate. It's an event that's fired by the archiver, not by a camera. And it's an event that's fired when the number of events being sent by video units to the archiver becomes excessively high. As we can see here, there's a toggle switch to set the event on or off, enabled or disabled, as well as a threshold that can be set manually. By default, this toggle switch is set to off. An archiver will not generate that event unless we toggle it on. And by default, if we toggle it on, we'll find that the event threshold is 10,000 events over a 5-minute period. That's the point at which the archiver would fire the event. And I'll just show you here on my training system that in the config tool, video task, by selecting roles and units, I choose my archiver, resources tab, advanced settings. Down here at the very bottom of the advanced settings page, we find this new 5.11 feature, set notification for high event rate. I've toggled mine on. This value is set to off by default. All right, so we've seen that we can enable this optional event for the archiver known as high event rate. But what do we do with that? What do we do if we do enable that event to occur? By itself, an event is really nothing more than an entry in the database. There's no action linked to an event by default. An event doesn't mean an alarm is being triggered or a notification is being sent. However, just like all other events in Security Center, you as a system administrator can choose to link an action to an event. And that's what we're looking at here in this screen capture. We're looking at the Identity tab of our archiver, and we can see that there's been an action linked to the event, high event rate. Whenever that event is fired, the action that we've configured here is to send a message to all members of the administrators group. And send a message is not send an email, by the way. It's a pop-up message to anybody who's connected to the system. And the message would contain the text event flood in archivers DB. And let me just show you how we can set this up in my live system. And here we go on my training system. I've logged into the config tool application as a member of the administrators group. I'll use the video task to show the list of roles and units, selecting the archiver role for which I want to enable the event high event rate. And we see that under resources, advanced settings, that this has already been toggled on, so that means the event will be generated. What we can do with the event can be set up over here in the Identity tab. By expanding the Actions branch, we see that there is currently no automatic action associated to an event fired by the archiver. I'm going to click Actions, and I'm going to add an action such that when this event occurs, I want such and such action to follow. And the event that we're interested in, by the way, these are just archiver events, depending on the type of entity you've selected. Because I've selected an archiver in the tree on the left, I only see archiver events. If I had selected a camera, I would only see camera events. If I had selected a door, I would see only door events, etc. Right? So in our case, what I want to do is I'm interested in the event high event rate. And if ever that happens, I want automatically for the system to, and you see that we have a choice of many possible actions. Send an email, trigger an alarm, reboot a unit. I'm going to select send a message. Once again, this is a pop-up message to users who are connected to the Security Center system. To whom will the message be sent? It'll be sent to the entire administrators user group. So any member of the administrators group who's logged on will receive a pop-up message saying high event rate. That pop-up message will have a timeout value of 10 seconds, and if nothing happens, the message will be dismissed or at least hidden from view after 10 seconds. That's what this value does. I don't want that behavior occurring. If the event rate is high on my archiver, I want the warning message presented, and it should just stay there. Don't go away by yourself. So I've toggled off the timeout value for this message. And lastly, you can link it to a schedule. For some events, we might only want to be alerted, I don't know, when the office is closed on the overnight shift. For other events, we might want to be alerted when the office is open. In our case, this event to action relationship will be valid during the schedule always. Save, and we see that I now have an automated action linked to the event. And lastly, investigating. So if we do encounter this event of too many events being written to the archiver's database, we would want to troubleshoot and try to understand what's causing it, where it's coming from. So I'm going to show you here a tool that we have to help you isolate the problem. Now, this wouldn't necessarily indicate why the problem is happening, but as you can see from these illustrations, we do have a statistics page where you can see the number of events generated by each camera connected to the archiver, and by quickly reviewing the events over the last minute, you could identify one or multiple cameras that are perhaps problematic. And let me show you where we can find that. Once again, I use the config tool application, logged on as a member of the administrators group. My video task, roles and units, selecting my archiver, going to its resources tab, and clicking at the bottom of the resources page, statistics. I will refresh the archiver's statistics and look at the details. And it's on this details page that I can see the events triggered over the last minute. So this is just a training server, not a production server. I have only 4 cameras. You can imagine 40 cameras on some production system. And you'll see that there is indeed a column called events in the last minute. In this particular situation, my cameras look normal. They're sending normal numbers of events, but what we would expect in a troubleshooting situation is one of these may have thousands, or rather 10,000 events over 5 minutes means that it would be, 2,000 events a minute. We would see at least 2,000 events a minute for one of these cameras if we were generating that event flood to the archiver. So this is where we see it in the statistics page of the archiver. Don't forget to click that refresh button. This is a page that doesn't refresh by itself but must be manually refreshed, and that's where we can find the number of events over the last minute for each camera. So this concludes the What's New in Security Center 5.11 video portion of the training. Thank you. What's new in Security Center 5.11 ALPR, or AutoView? For the automated license plate module AutoView, there are 2 new supported features for Security Center 5.11: SSH tunneling and polygons in map mode. Let's take a look. Typically, when adding a Sharp license plate reader unit to the system, the server connects to the unit over HTTPS, port 443, and the unit then uses port 10,001 for the LPM protocol. This means that NAT port forwarding configuration must be applied to the firewall or router to properly manage the incoming LPM communications on port 10,001. This new feature eliminates the need for port forwarding to be applied. The server will still connect to the unit over HTTPS, but then instead of listening for incoming traffic on 10,001, it'll initiate a secure SSH tunnel with the unit. And that SSH tunnel will then be used for bidirectional LPM communication. How do we turn this feature on? First of all, it's only supported in Security Center 5.11 with units running Sharp OS 14.1 and later. When adding a Sharp V camera, you'll find a new checkbox in the Creating a Unit dialog. Selecting this checkbox will enable the SSH tunneling feature. If it's unselected, the server will use the old method of listening on port 10,001 for incoming LPM communications. The next new feature for Security Center 5.11, you can now draw polygons to narrow your search results in investigative reports such as reads and hits reports. This is perhaps more of a refinement or improvement rather than a brand new feature. It applies to the security desk's hits and reads multi-region tasks. Previously, we could define trapezoids like squares or rectangles for our search area. Well, we're no longer limited to 4 sides. Polygons can be created to better define some search areas. The new Draw Polygon tool allows you to create search areas with as many sides as you want. Also, you can import KML files to use regions created in third-party mapping software like Google Earth. Let's take a look at such a search area being set up using polygon areas in this screen recording. So these polygon search areas can be used in the security desk's hits and reads reports, both basic and multi-region. Let's look at a reads multi-region report. I'll search for plate reads from 2 units across 2 search areas. I click Draw Region, and as I click and drag my mouse, each subsequent click adds another side to my search area. So I could create a traditional 4-sided search area if I want. I click Draw Region again for my second area, and this time I'll use an extra click to create a 5-sided area. So there we go, 2 search regions of different shapes, and one of them is a 5-sided polygon. And that's it for the new AutoView ALPR features in Security Center 5.11. Thank you for watching. What's new in Security Center 5.11? Access control. We've got 5 new features that have been added to Security Center 5.11's Synergis Access Control module. Let's start with enhancements to the Unit Replacement tool. The Unit Replacement tool can be found in the Config Tools menu, not the normal Tasks menu. It's used for the physical replacement of a hardware unit. Configurations that were applied to the old unit are copied and pushed to the new unit. And all historical references in the database are updated to point to the new unit instead of the old. For example, we could replace a defective door controller at a specific door with a new controller. Once we've run the Unit Replacement tool, the door reports would include events from both old and new controllers. This tool is not in fact new. What is new is the type of hardware on which we could use. We can now use the Unit Replacement tool to replace the following units with a second-generation Synergis Cloud Link. New generation Synergis Cloud Links, legacy Synergis Cloud Links, Synergis Master Controllers, and HID V1000 units. Next new feature, peer-to-peer support for the new generation Synergis Cloud Link appliance. Peer-to-peer communication between the hardware themselves is used for 2 features. Global anti-passback, that's to say when an anti-passback area is managed by several controllers, and I/O linking across different devices. For example, when this input is closed, I need that output relay to be active. This feature isn't new, but what is new is that the new generation of Synergis Cloud Link now supports this peer-to-peer communication. This requires Synergis Cloud Link firmware 2.0.3 or later. Peer-to-peer communication between the hardware is not enabled by default. To enable the peer-to-peer communication feature, this is done in the Config Tool application. We need the Access Control Roles and Units task, where we will select the Access Manager Server role, and by displaying its Properties tab, we find the checkbox here to activate peer-to-peer. This is unselected by default. Once selecting it, it will enable peer-to-peer communications for all connected Synergis Cloud Link units. New access control report filters. So 4 new query filters have been added to various access control reports. Here's the first new filter. It's called Access Point, and this can be found in the cardholder activities and the I/O configuration task. So let's take a look at that. If we come and look for cardholder activities, that's one of the investigation tasks. There we are. We find that there are all of the previous or traditional query filters. Who is the cardholder we're interested in? Which is the credential that we're interested in? Some cardholders could have multiple credentials. Which is the door we're interested in? All of these sort of typical query filters to run a cardholder activities report. And here's the new filter up at the top, Access Point. So we can now add to our query cardholder activity on one side of a given access point, the inside or the outside of a door of an area or what have you. So that's one place where we can find this new access point query filter. And the other is in the I/O configuration report. So if I close that one and I come down to the I/O configuration report, which should be down here at the bottom. There we go. It's under the maintenance tasks, I/O configuration. By selecting this, and I could choose the device I want to base my report on, perhaps the area, etc. But once again, we find this new query filter up at the top, Access Point. And this time it allows us to select inputs, outputs, or readers of a given device. Okay, so that's the first new query filter. It's called Access Point. The next new query filter is called Credential. And this is a query filter we can find in the cardholder configuration or the cardholder management tasks. So let's take a look at one of those. Here we go, cardholder management, and there's a new query filter called Credential. So we open the cardholder management task. We see a list of all of our cardholders. And the query filters are found on the left-hand side, Advanced Search. If I expand the Advanced Search menu, I can find all of the typical query filters that might be used to apply the queries to a large group of cardholders. Note, mine is a training system with a total of 8 cardholders. You might be working in a production system with 800 or perhaps even 8,000 cardholders. So mine is quite small and manageable. And why would we ever need a query? I can see all 8 of my cardholders in full detail right in front of me. Well, the idea is with a large group of cardholders, you often do need some sort of search filters available. And the new query filter that we find here is Credential. There we go. The choices or states being either assigned or unassigned. Here's how it could be useful. Look at a list of all of my card holders. I have a total of 8. I wonder if they all have badges, if they all have credentials that have been assigned. What if I apply the filter, show me assigned credential card holders only? Search. Now I have only 7. 1 out of my 8 card holders doesn't have a credential assigned, right? So by applying the query filter assigned, I can see that these 7 cardholders do indeed have credentials assigned. And if I were to apply the query filter unassigned, I then see my 1 single cardholder who doesn't have a credential assigned. Christia Freeland needs a credential assigned. So that's how this new query filter is used. And this query filter can be found in both cardholder management task, which is what we just looked at, as well as the cardholder configuration task, which is found down among the maintenance tasks. Cardholder configuration. If I open it, once again, I find a whole bunch of different query filters that could be run. Credential, assigned or unassigned. All right. The next new query filter, so we've seen the new filter access point, we've seen the new filter credential, the next new query filter side. And this can be found in the Door Activities Report. So if I scroll up to the Door Activities Report, as its name suggests, it's simply an additional query filter allowing you to run a report on the activities, but only on one side of a door instead of the door as a whole. That's the new filter there. And lastly, the fourth new query filter that's available, type. This is something we find in the Access Rule Configuration Report. So let me scroll down to the Maintenance Tasks where we find the Access Rule Configuration Report. And this new query filter type really allows us to drill down a little bit deeper into querying details about given access rules. Here's how it works. By opening the report, I see a list of my various access rules here on the left. If I were to select one of my access rules, like for example the main office open rule, and we expand the filter type, we find entities like areas, cardholders, cardholder groups, doors, etc. Now what this does is the following. Let me just select all of them to show you. So I want to query details of the main office open access rule, including all types of rule members. Generate report, and the list of results tells me that this access rule makes use of the office open schedule, names the all cardholders group, is used on this door side, this door side, this door side, this door side, and then is also used on the entrance side to this area and the exit side to this area. So it really gives us the details about the members of a given rule. Now here's something that's cool. So you could use it to, let me unselect, to figure out, I only need to know what are the cardholder groups used in this rule, and I don't know the office closed rule, and I generate my report, and I find that the office open rule refers to the cardholder group all cardholders, but the office closed rule refers to specific groups like the cleaning staff operations cardholders group, sales cardholders group, and visitors cardholders group. And so those are the different new query filters that have been added. We've got the access point filter, we've got the credential filter, we've got the side filter, and the type filter. Next new feature, new report columns in some of the access control reports. 3 new report columns have been added to some of the reports. Email address has been added to the access rule configuration report. Description has been added to the cardholder configuration report. And insertion timestamp has been added to access control unit events, area activities, door activities, and a number of other reports. Insertion timestamp refers to the time when the event was written to the server's database. This could differ from the event timestamp if the unit was offline at the time of the event. Which leads us to our 5th and final new feature in Security Center 5.11's Synergis Access Control module, the Report Accuracy Indicator. This feature is really a warning combined with a new report field. Let's consider the scenario where our Mercury EP1502 was running and operational, but due to network issues was temporarily disconnected or offline. When running a door activities report, you might see an orange warning bar pop open at the top of your results page. Clicking the orange warning bar will display more information. This query results warning is telling us that the report may be incomplete because one or more devices are currently offline. Once the device or devices are back online, refreshing the report will include all events. Notice each door event shows 2 timestamps. when the event was noted by the hardware device, and when the event was written to the server's database. So this concludes our What's New in 5.11 mini training. Thank you for attending.